So Justine Pissott broke the record today broke the record yesterday. Well, today, technically, I'm in Ireland, for most points in a quarter of a debut, most 3-pointers made in a debut. She broke a whole bunch of records. And most 3-pointers in a quarter in a debut. Tied the record for most 3-pointers in a quarter by a rookie. Broke this season's record, I'm pretty sure you have to go back 20 years to find a rookie who scored more points in a quarter. I think that's actually the first year of the league where the rookies were in their 20s and 30s, which don't really count. But like, she broke a whole bunch of records yesterday. A whole bunch of records. And we got to be real here. And you can see, like, she was exceptional. But if you guys did not see, if you're looking at her Instagram, there is somebody that I don't know how close Justine Pissott and this person are. I don't know, and I'm not pretending to know. I'm not pretending to say that this person is like Justine's best friend or anything. But they follow each other. Justine doesn't follow that many people. And as well as that, like, it comes up if you click on her story, but the response, all they had to do was give her a chance. That is clearly a shot at the fever. Not only that, if you know anything about her, Justine Pissott, in preseason, she had 8 points in 6 minutes against the New York Liberty. And not only that, she went coast to coast and missed a layup and burned the whole Liberty team. She had an assist. She had a couple of really good cuts. And she did a couple of really nice things on the floor. Yes, she was raw. And there were flaws. But she did so much good that you're like, okay, she's in the KK mold where it's like she does so much good and she does some bad stuff. But it's like, you iron that out. And like, she does a lot less bad than KK and does equal level of good. And we're seeing that KK might be the best power forward in the Fever right now. Which is, by the way, that's a bad... Like, KK couldn't get on the court for a EuroLeague team. That's a knock on the Fever more so than it's saying KK's anything special. But it's clear she's not a Stephanie White player. Why? Because she didn't go to South Carolina. She didn't go to UConn. And she's a rookie. But you're looking at this. If you look at her leg, there's an everything happens for a reason. And I hate saying this, but yeah, everything happens for a reason. You went to a semi-competent franchise. And I'm going to call them semi-competent because they're like, the Aces aren't even a good franchise. They're semi-competent. I'm shocked the Phoenix Mercury didn't try to steal her. I am shocked. Like, I am shocked that the Mercury didn't. And I said it from the start that the Mercury were going to do it. I am really, really surprised that the Phoenix Mercury did not pick her up when they signed Marta Suarez. Although Marta Suarez has been pretty good. Again, both of which have been good players. But yeah, look, it's one of those things now where she came out after that preseason game and everyone's like, oh, you know, are you happy to be on your dev contract? No, I want to be on the main team. I want to be on the main team. Like, she came out and said, I'm not happy on a dev. She came out and said, I want to make a final roster. Not, I want to make the Indiana Fever's team. She said, I want to make a 12-man roster. Not the Fever's 12-man roster, a 12-man roster. Because let's be very clear. The Indiana Fever said before. They said before anything that they had no intention of playing a rookie. Playing a dev player. Like, Amber Cox came out publicly and said that they weren't going to play any dev players, and if they were stuck, they were actually just going to call up hardship players. They're going to go down the old way, and the dev players aren't going to play. They're just going to be they're just going to basically be not training camp players, just practice players. Like, they came out and said that. Like, if we're going to be real, if you're part of that franchise and you've got any aspirations, Bree Hall signed because no other team wanted her. Even though, unpopular opinion, I think Bree Hall is not a bad player. I think Bree Hall is going to have a spot in the league. I think Bree Hall is pretty good. But no one else wanted Bree Hall. So, obviously, like, when it comes down to it, Bree Hall is Like, she's available. You got her. And beggars can't be choosers, if we're honest. And now we have got a situation where Justine Pissott, from the moment that she kind of checked it, she kind of realized after that game, it felt like the Indiana Fever were never going to let her play because they were scared of her what happened. They were scared that if she played, I said it from the very start, they were scared that if she played well enough, she was going to be taken by the Aces or by a team. Let's not say the Aces because that's you don't know what team it is. They didn't want to cut anybody. Like, I don't know why they cut. They clearly did not want to cut Shatori Walker-Kimbrough because she was a vet. They don't want to cut Demiris Dantas because she's a vet. They think that, you need to win a title with washed vets. And I'm like, just because the Aces have done it, the Aces employ AJ Wilson. There were no washed vets on there were no washed vets on the the Liberty team that won. There were no washed vets on the Lynx team last year. There wasn't. And they just because the Aces have had washed vets over the years, the Fever think it's good to have washed vets. No, the Aces have won despite having washed vets, not because they've had washed vets. It's not. They employ AJ Wilson, and even though I do personally believe Caitlin Clark can be the 1A on a championship team, if you're gonna ask Caitlin Clark to play like Sue Bird, she can't be. Sue Bird was never the 1A on a championship team. Your system does not allow a point guard to be a 1A on a championship team. In Stephanie White, your system does not allow a point guard to thrive. So Caitlin can never be a 1A on a championship team in your system. And Kelsey Mitchell is not good enough to be, as great as Kelsey Mitchell is, she's not good enough to be a 1A on a championship team. Aaliyah Boston's not good enough to be a 1A on a championship team. The only player who even has potential to be a 1A on a championship team is Caitlin Clark. But in your system, you want her to play like Sue Bird. And let's be real, Sue Bird needed Lauren Jackson and Breanna Steward to win championships. She never won one as a 1A. Sue Bird was never the best player on a championship team. I know Sue Bird had the bigger name. Sue Bird was never the best player on any of her teams. And let's be real, Sue Bird was in her mid-30s. She was in her mid-30s when her team was getting back-to-back number 1 overall picks. And she still played another 7 years after they drafted Jewel Lloyd. And she was still playing. As great as Sue Bird was, she was never the best player on her team. I've seen people being like, oh, she's the greatest point guard of all time. She was never the best player on her team. Never. And then when she was the best player on her team, they sucked. But, it is what it is. It is what it is. But yeah, look, it's very clear that Justine Pissott, and it was clear, I said it at the time, just the media being do you remember when Justine Pissott was quote unquote injured, and she was quote unquote injured, and then the media kept being oh yeah, these players, they're not going to play much, but they're happy to have a redshirt year and everything, and Justine Pissott comes out and says, and then Justine Pissott comes out and says, oh, don't believe the media. And a bunch of people were like, oh, look at all these people on the trying to stir up tension between her and the Indiana Fever organization. Oh, she's happy to be a Fever. She wants to be a Dev player. No one wants to be in Dev hell. Let's be very clear. The only players that want to be in Dev hell, that want to be a Dev contract player are players that can't get a real contract. Nobody chooses a Dev contract over a real contract unless you are Maureen Fautou, who's injured, and she knows next year the New York Liberty she has to hang out in New York for a year, and she knows next year she's not only going to be on the roster, she's going to be a key contributor on the roster because she's on the New York Liberty, who have a history of giving international players a lot of burn. So she's okay with that. Frida Booner was okay signing a Dev contract because she knew that as soon as she got up to speed, she was going to be upgraded to a real contract, and they were going to cut somebody else important. Nobody wants to be in Dev hell. And there's a difference between being on a dev contract and you're like, oh, this player's on a dev contract and they play. No. The fever is dev hell. Because I got to say this for the Aces. Like, Tania Latson, by the way, is probably going to play the 12 dev games. And then they're going to they're probably going to go and waive Janiah Barker and then pick up Janiah Barker next year. My guess is that the Janiah Barker thing is like, look, we want Janiah long term. She's out for the season. So we just ideally want to keep her for the year. Or we want to keep her for as long as possible because then we know Janiah is going to sign with us next year. She's going to sign with us next year. Or they can get something for injury for her. Once she's out for the season, Tania Latson is going to be a main on a full contract. But we got to be real. The fever is dev hell. Because if you look again with the Aces, the Las Vegas Aces made the conscious decision that we're not going to bring any dev players because we don't want to play dev players. The Indiana Fever made the conscious decision of we're going to keep dev players because we want them as practice players. Because you did not fight to keep Justine Pissott means your only intention was to ever have her as a practice player. You never wanted to bring her in as a roster spot. And if you guys haven't seen, even with like Atlanta, okay, cool, we're bringing in somebody with India Navarre. Look, we'll sign you to a dev contract. And that's a common thing if somebody gets waived or cut from a team. Justine Pissott got stolen. And she's dead on the money. Like, she wanted to make a team. And she made it very clear. I think she would have liked to have played for the Indiana Fever. But she made it very clear that her goal was to make a roster. Not her goal was to make the Fever roster. I think she would have been fine if it was the Fever roster. I think she wouldn't have been happy if it was the Fever roster. Her goal was very clear. She wanted to make a roster. A roster. And she made a roster. And I'd say she is delighted that it is the Las Vegas Aces. I don't know where she would have liked to have been drafted. But let's be real. If she was drafted by the Aces at the end of that second round, she would already have been playing and she would already be in the rotation for the Aces. She just got unlucky that the one team she would not have played for. By the way, maybe the Chicago Sky, because they had Latasha Lattimore and they just got rid of her and no one's ever seen her again. Every single player in the second round that was drafted, other than Lattimore, up before last night, had played more minutes than Justine Pissott. The Indiana Fever were the only team in that second round who had no intention of ever playing one of their dev players. No intention of ever. And not even playing. Not even giving them a chance to try out. Because I know little Paige Bueckers hasn't played yet, but she was given every opportunity. They took the third round pick over. She was given every opportunity to make that team. Nothing that happened in preseason mattered for the Indiana Fever. They picked their 12. And look, all they had to do was give her a chance. Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is a player that made it very clear from preseason that she was not happy. Not that she wasn't happy being a dev contract player. She's probably grateful to any team that gave her any sort of a contract and got her into the league. But she wanted more. And you want a player. Some people are like, oh, that's not being a team player. And what the fuck are we talking about? Like, nobody wants... It's like saying, I don't know, if you're a G League player. It's like saying if you're a player for South Bay Lakers and you come out and you're like, look, I want to get an NBA contract. And you're like, you're not a real team player for the Lakers then. Why? She wasn't a team player for the Fever. She wasn't even on the Fever. She wasn't even on the Fever. Like, I've seen people being like, oh, you know, at the time being like, oh, that's not a good attitude to have, you know, help the team win how you can. It's like, she wasn't even a member of the team. She was getting paid $700 a week. The Indiana Fever tried to hide her so instead of making $250,000 this season, she was making $700 a week, which is less than a lot of us make from talking on this fucking platform about her. And not only, again, making $700 a week, that when Dantas went down, they refused to call her up for games. You get $6,000 a game. Dantas missed 3 games from injury at the start of the year before Bree Hall was even able to play. She missed out on $18,000 because they didn't call her up for those games. They fucked her. They fucked her over. They never gave her a chance, and I am delighted for that. And you know what? I wouldn't begrudge her at all if she goes out and cooks the Fever tonight, and she goes and starts posting anti-Fever, like hints at anti-Fever stuff on social media. I would not begrudge it at all. Shout out Justine Pissott, way to hoop yesterday.